here on the commission and here in the audience has taken the time out of your schedules to attend tonight's meeting to observe how our town government works. All Farragut Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law, and that's TCA 8-44-103 for any of those of you that are interested. This Planning Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded tonight and will be posted on the Farragut YouTube channel, and links to this and other Planning Commission meetings recordings may also be found on the Town of Farragut website. And also learn this evening that these meetings will also be streaming on YouTube if you go to the Farragut YouTube channel. Anyone in attendance should be able to pick up a copy of the agenda at the door when you came in tonight. For any persons here tonight would like to address this commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, please pick up a blue comment card at the door where you came in and provide your name, address, and the agenda item number that you wish to comment on. There will also be time reserved at the end of the business meeting for residents' comments on non-agenda subjects, and that also requires you to fill out a blue comment card and leave it with Mr. Shipley. To conduct efficient business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. You can find these rules on the back of the agenda that you found at the door when you came in tonight. We ask that you observe those established meeting protocols that I just mentioned. So with that said, now I ask that if you're able, if you would please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection, and this will be followed by the recital of the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, well, before we get started, I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any announcements or recognitions they'd like to make. And if they don't, I would like to welcome our youth representative, Ms. Anna Presley, for the 2025 fiscal year as our youth representative. Welcome, Anna. I hope it's a very good year for you, and good luck with your studies this year.
Chairman Russ, I did want to make an announcement that I'm not sure we've talked about at the Planning Commission level. We lost another founding member a couple of weeks ago, Betty Dick, who served, helped found the town, served early on in from 81 to 87 as an alderman, and then from 2012 to 21 served on this body. She actually was instrumental in writing our first sign ordinance and was part of the committee that rewrote our sign ordinance after the Supreme Court ruling. Very big support of our town, very high energy, smart woman. Our town lost a very important person.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Now we'll move on. Before we get to the agenda items, we have election of officers, and starting off, I would like to ask if there are any nominations for chairman.
Nominate Scott Russ. I'll second.
All those, I'll recuse myself, and all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Noes? Mark, let the record show that I'll serve another year of punishment as the chairman of the Planning Commission. Now moving on, are there any nominations for the vice chairman of the Planning Commission?
Nominate Ed St. Clair.
Second.
With a second on the floor, are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Ed St. Clair as vice chairman of the Planning Commission say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes and one recusal. Let the record show that Vice Chairman will be serving as Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission for the following year. And now the Secretary of the Planning Commission, do we have any nominations?
I'll nominate Ms. Preston if you're still willing to do that.
Why not?
That's a yes?
Yes.
Do we have a nomination and a second?
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes? Let the record show that Secretary Preston will remain secretary with one recusal and 6 yes. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Mark, I understand we have a modified agenda. Let me allow you to know that we do have 7 commissioners present, and therefore we do have a quorum for tonight's meeting. And I understand we do have an amended agenda where we're removing item number 10.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Noes? No noes. Mark, let the record show that the amended July 18th Planning Commission meeting agenda has been approved. Are there any amendments to the minutes from the June 20th Planning Commission meeting?
No, sir.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the posted June 20th, 2024 minutes have been approved. So I understand, Mark, that we now, with the amended agenda, we have 8 business items for discussion, and we're going to start that off with your agenda item number 4, approval to replace existing 2-inch steel gas main lines with new 2-inch medium-density MDPE polyethylene plastic gas main lines along various streets in the Village Green subdivision. KUB applicant.
Yes, this is phase 1, actually, of a gas line upgrade in the entire Village Green subdivision. This is actually in the southern portion of Village Green. There's a number of streets that will be affected by this. Basically, there's existing 2-inch steel gas lines within the subdivision. They're abandoning some of these, and then they're replacing most of these with 2-inch plastic gas lines that would be just to the side of the existing steel lines. So since this does obviously affect a number of residents, one of the important aspects of this project is going to be making sure that all the residents are notified well in advance of the work, and that they obtain the right-of-way permit through our engineering department and coordinate the outreach and the traffic control, site restoration, and all those things that we typically work with applicants on through right-of-way permits. All this work will be conducted through directional boring. So the staff does recommend approval of this utility project, subject to obtaining the right-of-way from the town, using the directional boring, and then notifying all the affected property owners in advance of the work. So I'll scroll through some of the pages, and this is kind of the different sections of Village Green that would be affected with this first phase. Again, it's mostly the southern portion of Village Green, but a number of streets, as you can see on the screen. Pretty big project. So we do have someone here from KUB if you all have any questions for them.
Okay. Before we do open it up for discussion, I'd like to ask that, based on the staff information, do we have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
And Mark, do you have anybody signed up to speak on this?
No, sir.
Okay, if you would, please give us your name and your address and proceed. Colton, do you have anything you'd like to add or any presentation you'd like to bring to this?
No, I think Mark hit everything on the head. It's just old steel that was put in early 70s that needs to replace with new plastic, so it's fresh for everybody.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be an improvement. Whenever you do the door knockers to inform the residents, how far in advance are you guys placing those information knockers alerts on the doors?
It'll be at least 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We need more advance notice and do that.
When you guys do that, can you coordinate with us so that maybe we can get something out on our social media channels as well?
Yes.
Because 2 weeks, people will forget it, and then if we can remind them as you guys are getting closer, then that'd be an opportunity. Thank you.
So for this item, I'll go ahead and open it up. Are there any commissioners that have any other questions or comments at this time on this agenda item?
I have a question.
Vice Mayor? Or Vice Mayor?
You're welcome to it,
Next
Betty.
time, yeah. Next one over. Vice Chairman, St. Clair.
Can you abandon the steel lines? What step, do you take any steps to evacuate them or plug them or what?
Yes, we make sure that all the existing gas in there is purged out completely, and then it's left in the ground, and, because we're gonna be directional boring the majority of the project, so that would cause us digging up a lot more to try and remove it. So we do purge out everything and then make sure that it is completely safe.
Purge it with nitrogen or cap it? Is that what you do?
We purge it out and make sure there's no natural gas in there, and then we cap it off, yes.
Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, with that said, and.
Okay, I have one.
Oh,
So
wait,
just for
please.
clarity, this is the project you're working on, you're gonna be doing all of this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna send this out to the Village Green HOA, so
Okay.
they're aware.
And that lower left section, as Mark pointed out, that should be the first phase, so that entire loop on that left,
Okay,
lower left section.
okay. Thank
That'd
you
be
so
the
much.
southwest part of Village Green, would be the
Okay.
starting point.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions here, and mostly it's with how much intrusion there is on private property. I kind of went through all the drawings, and it looked like I counted, I think 97, maybe I'm wrong, but 90-plus houses where you're actually going to replace the line from the main to the house, to the meter.
Yes.
Okay. So when you do that, what is the intrusion on the yard? You're going to put an entry hole? You're going to bore, right? So you're
Correct.
going to have an entry hole near the main
Yes,
somewhere, and then you got to have an exit hole near the meter,
correct.
and then you're going to have a coil, I guess, with the new what do you call it?
MDPE.
MDPE
Yes,
pipe on a reel, I guess, that you're going to pull back through the hole. Is that the way that works?
correct.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on in the people's yard. So this is a little, normally when you guys do work, it's kind of out front,
Right.
down the sidewalk, and you're underground, so nobody even knows it. But it looks like there's a lot of work going on in people's yards here. So it sounds to me like, I noticed some of them are actually going around to the backyard, okay? From an entry point in the front yard. So there's a lot going on there. So I think it's really, really important that you talk to people, make sure they understand what's going on.
We do. We make sure we have communication with the property owners, because we need to whenever we relight their gas, and make sure that they are aware of everything, and we coordinate that with them so that they are home and present whenever we need them there for the project.
And then, of course, restoration. If you're digging up
Yes.
their yard and their lawn, you got at least 100 people here that you're going to be in their yards digging up the yard. So in this project in particular, it sounds like it's a priority to make sure people know what's going on.
Correct.
So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Green. Thank you, Mayor. With discussion now completed, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes? Noes? No noes? Let the record show that the agenda item for the installation of the MDP gas lines approved with 7 yes and no noes. Thank you, Colton. I appreciate you coming out tonight. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, approval to add approximately 385 feet of new fiber optic communication cable in a new conduit and approximately 1,000 linear feet of fiber optic communication cable in an existing conduit along a portion of the east side of West End Avenue and extending to the macro cell tower that's being constructed in the northeast corner of West End Center behind the Putt-Putt. ADB Engineering on behalf of the MCI network.
Yeah, most of this work, all this work's going to be on the east side of West End Avenue from Kingston Pike back to the macro cell tower that's under construction in the kind of the north east corner of West End Center. The pink lines are existing conduit that they'll be extending the cable through. And then the green section, which is about 385 feet, will be new conduit. So the vast majority of this project is going to be using existing conduit. It will all be performed using directional boring. And similar to the previous item, the staff recommends approval of this utility project subject to obtaining the right-of-way permit through the town. And the work, of course, being conducted with directional boring, and then notifying the affected, in this case, affected businesses of any potential disruption that they may encounter with this project. I think there's also a letter of credit that the town engineer is requiring for this, that the applicant is aware of and working on. So with
So is
those,
that the fourth subject to is a letter of credit?
so with those subject twos, the staff again recommends approval of this project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a second. Mark, do we have anybody signed up to speak on this installation
sir.
project?
No, sir.
You do not. And you're with MCI, or
Yes, sir.
working on behalf of MCI, rather?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you would, before we open it up, could you give us your name and address, please?
Absolutely. Mike Micah. I'm with MCI Verizon Business, 603 Warehouse Park Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Do you have anything to add based on Mark's comments?
No, sir, not really. I just wanted to let you know we would door tag these businesses here, and from our pre-construction, we called in some locates. It's going to be very disruptive because of that, like little rock medium that's there. So we think this job's going to go very, very, very unnoticed.
What would be the ideal time if this is approved that you would like to start the project, and what would that duration look like?
Yes, sir. So I believe the tower site was approved July of last year, 23. They are right now in, they were building that site out there. I know there's been a few setbacks, so I would say in the next 60 days, we'd probably like to get it placed.
Okay. And that would begin when starting when?
Well, we would like to start as soon as we receive permit, yeah.
Okay.
Because what actually happens is Verizon Wireless will build the pink out to the street. So we literally have the 350 to 80 feet section that we need to do. And generally, what we like to do is we like to get there before they're done, and we would be just sitting there right away. And then when they're done with their work, they'll take our cable. We'll leave enough in the handhole in front of there for them to pull into the site. So there's no more disruption whatsoever going on.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to commissioners with any questions. Commissioner Devlin?
No.
Commissioner Preston?
I have
Commissioner
nothing.
Green? Vice Mayor
I have
Hovland?
nothing. I have nothing.
Okay. We've closed the discussion now, and we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Noes? No noes? Let the record show that agenda item number 5 for the installation of fiber optic cable has been approved. 7 yes, no noes.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor
you,
and
Mr.
council
Mike. I
members.
appreciate it. Good luck with the project.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, the next agenda item is agenda item number 6, discussion on the approval of the Town of Farragut Mixed-Use Town Center Vision Plan. Town of Farragut is the applicant.
This item is just for discussion purposes only tonight. Last month, the staff reviewed the 2 real major changes that were recommended based on the May workshop session that we had with the Planning Commission. And then we also presented the plan for approval as an ordinance. There was some concerns about the way the plan should be best approved. Staff indicated why we were proposing it the way we were. But because there's no set deadline on this project, there were a number of citizens that expressed some concerns and some planning commissioners about what would be the most proper way to adopt or approve this plan. So The staff, this was basically postponed last month, and the staff was asked to consult with the town attorney to determine what would be the best way moving forward to act on this particular plan. So we have Tom Hale here this evening, town attorney, and he can give you his thoughts on this project. And if there are any other comments you have on the plan after Tom's finished, we can go through those as well. And I think you have a presentation,
Yeah, I'll
maybe.
do the presentation first,
Af-
that way they have.
you
a
wanna do that?
background for you to speak to.
I have one
Okay.
question.
Yes, sir.
The item talks about being discussion and approval. And I think when you were introducing, you just said discussion. Is it,
Well, it's a
Discussion on the
On the approval.
not Actual, it's not a voting item this evening.
Yeah.
You can vote.
Yes.
clear words?
If you're wanting to do yours first, I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to get
it-
out of this and get into the
Yes,
other
it would
one.
help, I think it would help the planning commissioners for me to provide some background before,
Louise, but before you get started, before we start that, typically in this situation, though, when we do have people signed up for these events, that we would typically allow them 5 minutes of their time to speak. But I think it'd be pertinent tonight to allow your presentation and then feedback from Attorney Hale, and then we'll ask people that have signed up to speak, to come forward and speak.
this
Okay,
is really intended to be an extension of the staff report,
Correct.
so.
Thank you.
So this is, I kind of pulled out the presentation I provided, I think in May, regarding this, how we got here, but there's some more detail that I've added to it based on some of what the planning commissioners and the citizens were, concerns they were expressing about adopting this plan. So I wanted to go through the history of our planning. So obviously, starting with our founding principles, we were founded for planning and zoning to protect the residential character of our community. We wanted to honor and celebrate this area's history, establish high road standards, and maintain our roads, improve our transportation network, preserve land for parks, for communities' recreational needs, and well-kept clutter-free right-of-ways, and we were going to run in a fiscally conservative manner. Tennessee Code annotated addresses what a planning commission's, municipal planning commission's duties are. We are to make and adopt an official general plan. 13-4-202 provides that the planning commission and chief legislative body may adopt parts of the comprehensive plan that correspond generally with one or more of the functional subdivisions of the subject matter of the plan. So we've had, obviously, since the beginning, we've adopted several different plans, updated our plans through the years. The first plan was adopted by the Planning Commission in October of 1980, and that was certified to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, not adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The Farragut Land Use Plan, adopted by the Planning Commission in February of 1982, again, was certified to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, not adopted. Farragut 2000, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen voted to accept as a working draft in February 1991, and I don't have it in my records, but it became an official plan in April of 91, so I'm making the assumption that the Planning Commission adopted it in April of 91. The Farragut Land Use and Transportation Policy Plan was actually adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on February 22nd, 2001. That's the only plan, comprehensive plan that the board has actually adopted. The comprehensive land use plan update was adopted by that we're currently working under, was adopted by the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission in December 2012 and certified to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So when the first plan was put together, Farragut 2000 was our first major comprehensive plan. One of the first things, they started in 1987 with that plan, and they asked the Planning Commission to assess what the town looked like at full build-out, and began to prepare for a comprehensive plan that dealt with how we wanted to unfold and eventually build out. So Farragut 2000, next one. Accepted as a working document, included several working committees. I don't need to go through them, but you can imagine that a comprehensive plan like that takes quite a bit of work. So Farragut 2000 plan, Chapter 6, Economic and Private Development, had some community goals, one of which was commercial development can be tastefully and intelligently integrated into a residential environment. Mixed-use developments consisting of commercial, office, and residential uses combined into attractive functional plan are especially desirable. It went on to target appropriate areas for economic development activity, one of which was Kingston Pike, limited to the areas presently zoned commercial and largely undeveloped area behind and south of Brooklawn Square, which is the Biddle property. They had several recommendations to maintain a high quality of life. One was, number 10 in that list was promote well-planned mixed-use developments that allow a blend of various compatible land uses. If necessary, the current zoning ordinance should be amended in order to encourage this type of development. Make appropriate changes to the town regulations to remove any barriers to mixed-use development. And encourage public-private development of mixed-use sites. One, of course, was highlighted in here is the Biddle property. Moving on to the Farragut Land Use and Transportation Policy Plan, which was adopted in 2001. It states the town should promote Kingston Pike corridor between Glen Abbey Boulevard and Concord Road, including Village Green Commercial Complex, as the town center area to serve as a community focal point. And moving forward to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan update of 2012, they further defined the boundaries of what they believed to be the mixed-use town center. Planning Commission had adopted that. So moving forward from after that plan, we started working with that plan. In January of 2015, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen adopted new requirements for general commercial for the mixed-use town center. Much of those new requirements came from the town center district. They adopted Ordinance 1422 that same evening, and that adopted the area designated mixed-use town center on the future land use map. And you guys have this. This was adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The boundaries of the mixed-use town center were adopted, as well as the mixed-use town center land use description in Chapter 3, the text of that, which spelled out the parameters of the mixed-use town center regarding intent, uses, and character. In October of 2020, the land use description text was amended to include, and you guys have that in front of you now, that spells out, updated the parameters for what is considered for the mixed-use town center. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen specifically did not update the MUTC vision laid out in Chapter 5 of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and that's pages 49 through 53, which is basically an illustration of a vision for each of the quadrants in the mixed-use town center. That was not adopted when we adopted the land use description and the boundary for the mixed-use town center. So, and I did want to just give you guys a quick update. This mixed-use town center vision plan is part of an overall effort to update our plan that started, really it started in 2017 when we put together a steering committee to begin the review of the plan, and we chose several corridors to review. You can see them up there, and how we updated the land use descriptions. This is generally the activity that's happened over the last 7 years. So this is our future land use map in 2012. This was how it was adopted. After we've gone through all of our corridor studies, getting public input, this is our land use map. This will be what our land use map looks like tonight after we adopt the changes surrounding the mixed-use town center, the medium density and the low density, and that goes away. As anyone can see, the land use map as it stands now is considerably less dense. That's what the community had communicated, and I got an opportunity to go through a lot of the already developed property to make sure that their densities were correct. There was a lot of corrections to make there. So this is the map we are hopefully working with as we move forward. One of the main concerns that this community has had over the last several years is they did not want any more large footprint apartment complexes in the town. And over the years, we have been able to address that through our comprehensive land use plan. One of the first things we did was we reduced the density range for medium density from 6 to 12 to 6 to 8 and added a high-density residential from 9 to 12. But we did not go into the land use map and designate any undeveloped property high density. That essentially took high-density development off the map outside of the mixed-use town center. We also went in to amend some of our zoning ordinances to provide a little bit more control for the community, specific to the planned commercial development. Some language is amended so that there was more control at the board level and the planning commission level over any proposed amendments to an existing approved plan. It would have to go through the planning commission and ultimately to the board. We also amended neighborhood convenience commercial to remove apartments as a use and added in a requirement that a concept plan would be part of a rezoning request to NCC so that the residents that are immediately around the area will have a better understanding of what the development is proposing to do. Mixed-use town center, inside the mixed-use town center was kind of had to be handled separately. In 2020, we did amend the mixed-use town center land use description to restrict the multifamily to the Biddle Farms. We have zoning ordinance, of course, we amended PCD, but we also amended general commercial as it relates to MUTC. Previous to this amendment, 4-story buildings in the C1 zoning district were permitted by right with commercial on the main and residential above. We went in and required that there's a review and approval control for buildings exceeding 2 stories. So that was no longer by right, required a concept plan to do that, and the approval or denial of this concept plan with anything more than 2 stories could be based on surrounding context and community objectives. And one of our community objectives is that we don't want to see any more high-density multifamily, these large footprint apartment complexes in the town. So that gives the Planning Commission some teeth to handle that. So the most important part of this that I think the Planning Commission needs to understand is that we've already adopted the boundaries of the mixed-use town center as a board, and we've already adopted the land use description, which provides the parameters. From my perspective, the vision plan wasn't adopted in the land use plan that we originally had, and I'm not entirely sure that I support that we adopt that by ordinance this go around either. But I'll let Tom speak to some of his concerns about that.
Thank you, Louise. Attorney Hale?
Yeah, would it be better for me to go up there, or would it be better for me to sit here?
Yeah, if you could approach that, might be
It doesn't
better. I
matter
think
to
we
me.
probably get some
Just-
audio.
It might be a little,
We want to see your mug on MTV.
I don't want to be on TV. Thank you all. Let me just start out by saying, when I was asked to come tonight, and I got to looking at the agenda packet from last time, and I read the article in the newspaper, and I saw some of the questions that were being asked, it made me realize that I think I needed to give you some context, everybody some context, about the way our state law is set up when it relates to planning and zoning. Because I think most people don't really, you all probably do, but most people probably don't have a clue, and they don't know how the things fit together. And I found a Court of Appeals decision where Justice Koch was the judge that wrote this opinion. He was on the Court of Appeals when he wrote it, but he ended up on the Supreme Court. And I thought it was a really good explanation for this whole subject matter. and it will help you understand when people start talking about the plan versus the ordinance and passing it this way or passing it that way, or and what's a vision plan versus what's a plan. I think you need to start by having a fundamental understanding of the difference between planning and zoning. So what Justice Koch said in this decision, and I'm going to read it so that you can get the full context. It's chock full of citations to legal cases, which I'm not going to read, but this is all supported by case law. Local governments lack inherent power to control the use of land within their boundaries. This power rests with the state. However, the General Assembly may delegate it to local governments. Accordingly, local governments must exercise their delegated powers consistently with the delegation statutes. The General Assembly has empowered county and municipal legislative bodies to zone property. At the same time, it has delegated the land use planning function to local and regional planning commissions. The power to zone must be distinguished from the power to plan. Zoning and planning are complementary pursuits that are largely concerned with the same subject matter. They are not, however, identical fields of municipal endeavor. Planning involves coordinating the orderly development of all interrelated aspects of the community's physical environment, as well as all of the community's closely associated social and economic activities. It is a continuous process carried out indefinitely through time. Common sense and reality dictate that a general plan is not like the law of the Medes or the Parisians. It must be subject to reasonable change from time to time as conditions in the community change. Zoning, on the other hand, involves the territorial division of land into districts according to the character of the land and buildings, their suitability for particular uses, and the uniformity of these uses. Zoning ordinances are now the most important and prevalent type of American land use control. These ordinances focus primarily on the use of property and the structural and architectural designs of the buildings. The state enabling legislation places authority to plan and the authority to zone with different governmental entities. Planning is entrusted to appointed municipal and regional planning commissions, like this body. In contrast, the zoning power is squarely placed at the hands of the local legislative bodies because the power to zone is viewed as essentially a legislative exercise of the government's police power. Local legislative bodies may enact zoning plans recommended by planning commissions, but they are not obligated to do so. Local legislative bodies may also amend zoning ordinances. However, they must submit proposed changes to the Planning Commission for review. If the Planning Commission disapproves of a proposed change, a majority of the entire membership of the local legislative body must approve the proposed change in order for it to be valid. Accordingly, the state enabling legislation vests the local legislative bodies, like the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, with the prerogative to make final decisions on all zoning matters. Local governments may decide for themselves how best to exercise the land use control powers delegated by the General Assembly, as long as their decisions do not conflict with state law. The Tennessee Code makes very clear that before the legislative body, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, can adopt a zoning ordinance, that the Planning Commission of the municipality must have undertaken the task of formulating a zoning plan. That's provided in, I'm not going to give you the citation, you won't remember it anyway. The code makes clear that the power of the chief legislative body to execute the zoning powers, that they must first have the plan recommended by the Planning Commission. The code also provides that the Planning Commission has the duty, and Louise referred to this, the Planning Commission has the duty to make and adopt what is called in the statute an official general plan for the physical development of the municipality. The code sets out what must be included in that plan, and it's the kind of things that are in our plans. There are also a lot of things that can be in the plan that are elective, that you can put in the plan if you want to put it in the plan. The code also provides for how the plan is adopted or approved. The Planning Commission must first hold a public hearing, whether it's adopting the original plan or whether it's adopting an amendment. The public hearing is held, and then the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the chief legislative body about the plan or the amendment. It must pass by a majority of the members of the commission, and they have to certify it to the chief legislative body. The code provides that once the commission has adopted the general plan or an amendment to the general plan and has certified the result to the chief legislative body, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, it may ask the legislative body to adopt, in the words of the statute, the general plan by ordinance. Not adopting it by ordinance does not make it non-existent. It just operates as a general plan without having been adopted as an ordinance. Our code is very clear. It's not this way in all states, but our code is very clear. The chief legislative body can either adopt all or parts of the plan as an ordinance, or they can just adopt it as a general plan. It's up to the chief legislative body what they wish to do. All of this is not unusual or unique, let's say, unique to Tennessee. Zoning laws were adopted in the 20s and 30s in the United States after a group prepared what are called uniform laws. These uniform laws were used because nobody wanted to reinvent the wheel, every state. So all the states then used different, or they used the same uniform laws. And so that's why all the states somewhat have similar law, but it's not always the same. And in particular, the impact or the enforcement or the power that the general plan has in any state is different. In Tennessee, the general plan is viewed as a guideline or a document that can be looked at and used for guidance. In other states, there's about 3 or 4 states, California is one of them, it's sort of like an ordinance. It's sort of like a law. You have to follow it. You can't deviate from it unless you amend it, or that's one of the requirements. There are other states that don't give it hardly any credence. They say, well, we don't really care. We've got a zoning ordinance. Let's follow the zoning ordinance. And frankly, for those of you who know me and have heard me before, I personally prefer to not have it adopted as an ordinance. I prefer to have the plan as a plan, just what it's called, a plan. It's a plan. It's a guideline. You can follow it, or if you need to change it, you can change it. Everybody has different views on that. Our board has decided that they have adopted the part that is the mixed-use town center, the part of the plan that's the mixed-use town center, that's been adopted as an ordinance, but the rest of the town, the plan for the rest of the town has not been adopted as an ordinance. So I will stop and answer questions, but I guess the reason I'm here is to give you a thought about the vision plan that we're talking about here. Pardon me. The vision plan, as I see it, is about 90-something pages. Am I right about that? 90 pages. That's not an amendment to the plan, you all, in my opinion. It is a document that has been created to build consensus as to the recommendations for what the plan ought to be as it's set out in this document. The plan, this is the plan for the whole town right here that we adopted in 2012. And so what I view this document as is a document that is intended to help persuade why the changes that are suggested in that document should be adopted. I don't think anybody has looked at that document, looked at our current plan, and considered how do we meld the two documents together. And I think that's what has to happen before we can amend our existing plan. We're amending an existing document. We have to know what's in there. And we have to know what we're changing, because if we start changing things and people don't understand, well, what applies and what doesn't apply, then they won't know how to follow it. They won't know how to, that's one of the things that the law needs to be clear to people, or they can't understand what they need to do. So my sense of it is that this is a great document, and don't get me wrong, but it's not an amendment to the plan. It is a document that is proposing that you amend the plan, but it needs, after the consensus is built that people like what's in there, then we need to go back and come up with an amendment that fits within our current plan so that, and we probably need to, Mark and I talked about it a little bit today, we probably need to go back and take all of these other amendments that have occurred since 2012 and get them all put in a new document so that we have it in one place and people know exactly what it is. I will say one final thing, and that's because this really gets confusing sometimes. Everything that's in the plan, it's a plan, you all. It's a plan. It's not, when you adopt a plan, you're not budgeting money to build anything. You're not budgeting money to do anything. You're adopting a plan. This is what we hope or think is be good for our town to develop in this way. And to the extent you've adopted it as an ordinance, then, maybe at some point you have to amend it if somebody proposes something that is outside the bounds of the plan. But in Tennessee, it very well may be you don't have to amend the plan just because you've adopted it as an ordinance. The law is not crystal clear on that. But what I try to tell people is let's don't adopt something and then not follow it. If we're going to adopt it as an ordinance, then we need to try to follow it if we can. And that's why I don't like adopting a plan as the law, because it's just a plan. It's a guideline. You already got the zoning ordinance that tells you what you can and can't do on a particular piece of property. And so we got two layers here we're trying to deal with, and I just think it's inordinately difficult. But that's just my sense of it. Anybody can have the opinions about this they want. So that's really what I wanted to articulate, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Attorney Hale, I do have, you're making me think a little bit differently about this. I was initially thinking you just take this whole plan, take out those 4 pages that are the vision plan, and then plop this in. But that may not be sufficient because there's a lot of detail in here about how we did public input that probably doesn't belong in a
that's all
plan.
To persuade and build consensus.
Yeah.
That's really not part of the plan.
So really what we're looking at is either pulling the pages from the recommendations that we've built a consensus around, and it may be not even pulling these recommendations, which go from page 55 to, say, 78, and then we have something on economic development. We have street. I'm not entirely sure if that belongs in this document. It may belong in our road.
This is my very point.
Yeah.
nobody has read this document with the thought in mind, how does it fit
Fits
into
into
our
the-
plan? And we've got to do that, or else we're going to create the same confusion
yeah.
for everybody that we had last meeting. Because I think it's not intuitive sometimes, this process. It's just not intuitive.
I actually like your idea, mostly, this sounds from my perspective, because I'm rolling off the board. I hate how they did that plan. The size of it is unwieldy.
This one?
Yes, that's annoying.
Barely fits in my briefcase, but it
And you
does
have to
fit.
fold it, and it's like, we could put all the things, because we've made a lot of amendments to the land use descriptions. This is, you're bringing up, to me, a very valid point, that we might have a lot more work to do here to get this into a condition where it can be part of another updated plan. And we're
Yes.
kind of at that point, because we have made so many changes since the comprehensive land use plan was updated in 2012. So that's something to
And
think
I
about.
think one thing we have to think about as we look at the plan, again, it's a planning document. The zoning ordinance, and the cases are real clear about this. The zoning ordinance is written totally different than a plan, because it's the law and it's written in a way that you can apply it to specific situations. The plan is more, it's not really applying to a particular situation. It is talking about a vision for what is to be possibly in this area, but it doesn't get into the details. So what we don't want to make this document so detailed that it becomes kind of like a zoning ordinance. This body doesn't have authority over zoning. It has to go to your all's other meeting that you have 2 times a month.
Understood.
Anything else anybody has?
Yeah, I have a question.
Where,
Then
Yeah,
what-
He started. He started.
Sorry.
Point of clarification,
Thank you.
we have in the plan, and I'll just use an example because it's one you're heard by ours. On page 69, we've got this quote plan in the item that we're talking about.
Yeah, they can't hear you.
See,
Yeah.
item page 69 in the framework plan that we're looking at for this item on the agenda. And it's the Concord Road properties. Just use that as an example. If you look at item 12 on our agenda, it's got 4 amendment items, one of which is the Concord Road segment, which is clearly not in sync with what's in this. So as a minimum, I can't see adopting something here that I know I'm going to vote to change, in a few minutes. So to me, that points back to the integration of these amendments back into the plan
Mhm.
as a stepping off place somewhere. We got to come to grips with that.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of chasing our tail and got the cart before the horse.
Yeah, I think that's,
Do I understand that right?
I think you do. I mean, I think it's again, this is for discussion purposes only tonight. We're sort of in the consensus building mode, understanding what we're doing. And if, at some point, if you pass a resolution to recommend this as a consensus building document, a vision plan to the board, for the board to look at, and they might want to endorse it too. But it still, in my opinion, has to go back to have some work done to take out the stuff that doesn't need to be in there, that's not a planning type document, I mean, I was reading it, there's a lot of really good stuff in there, but it's not.
Doesn't belong in a planning document.
Yeah, it's a document that is intended to persuade people that we did the right thing by coming up with these recommendations here.
Well, I would also make, we've included the Concord Road in the mixed-use town center boundary in this plan. So that's got to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to amend.
But what's in the plan is going to be like item 12.
Understood, understood.
Just an example.
Well, and I would contend to you, the map around here is changing, so that needs to be reflected in whatever we adopt. But obviously, this is going to be a work in progress anyway. We're not done with this, so those changes can be made. But eventually, it's going to have to go up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to amend the boundary for the mixed-use town center. If we are so inclined to put Concord Road in the mixed-use town center, it's got to go up to the board for that portion of it, correct?
Yeah, that would be
That's
the Concord Road area is not currently in the boundary of the mixed-use town center?
Yep, it's
Then-
not.
And the mixed-use town center section of the plan has been adopted as an ordinance.
Yes.
So it would have to go either way, whether they adopt it as an ordinance or whether they just say, hey, I like that. It's good for that to be in there. You can do it either way you
Okay.
want to.
Okay.
I prefer the simple way, using the zoning ordinance to regulate. Anyway, it's just me.
Commissioner Green?
I was trying to sort out what we're going to do this evening with this document. What is your recommendation, that we do just keep working on it, or that we approve that as a vision and then go forth with the steps that need to be taken to amend it into the planning document?
To my view, the most you could do is pass a resolution saying you like it, and you would recommend it to the board
As a vision
for its
plan.
consideration.
As a vision plan.
As a vision plan, not part of the general plan. It's not
Okay.
yet ready to be part of the
Understood.
general plan.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Now that I've completely
So would we
confused you, I'll sit
so
down.
would we incorporate changes we know about from amendments into it
I-
before we finalize the vision plan?
I would think so.
I
I mean, since,
would think so,
yeah,
too. That's-
yes. Because we're making some changes tonight,
Yep.
so they
That's my
need to,
point.
yeah. Well, and there's some, I have some
Not
other
everything's in
concerns.
the, mixed-use town center, but
Yeah,
it's in. it's
Yeah,
in
there's
how
more
to
to
put
it than that.
Yeah.
Because we still got public discussion on this, so
Yep.
that's, we're not with, we've got a lot of that to look at
This is-
before we start doing anything.
there's more work to do.
I'd like to hear if any of the other commissioners at this end of the table have anything they'd like to add, or any questions for Attorney Hale or Vice Mayor.
Just so I understand, though, what you've said is, even if it is passed as an ordinance, it can still be changed.
You know, that's a good point. I wrote some notes about that very point, and that is this. Plans can be changed.
Right.
Ordinances can be changed. Everything the town does can be changed.
Sure.
And it happens all the time. Some people get offended by that. The judges, I liked reading the judges' comments about common sense
Sure,
and
sure.
reality and reason, because things change. That's the reality of the world we live in. And if you don't adopt, you may adopt an ordinance because you think at that moment it's a good thing to do. If things change, municipalities have the power to change what they've already decided.
Right.
Happens frequently. Don't like to do it, but if you can't, if you need to, you need to, if that's what the legislative body thinks.
Yeah, I got it. I just wanted to clarify that. I'll make sure I understood it. I think just my little bit of this, I think what's really important is that we're not under some kind of time clock here, right? So if this group thinks we need to go back and massage, or we need to look at making it part of the general plan, that all makes sense to me. So, but I also don't have any qualms with passing something sooner that says this is a vision that we support for the future also. So really, I don't know that, given what we just said about we can make changes, that there's some bad outcome here. That's my point.
Tom, is there a hierarchy within the law that says, yeah, I realize you can change, the bodies, legislative body as well as the planning can change through the processes. But is there a hierarchy between an ordinance and a plan relative to within the law?
Yeah, the law, I mean, an ordinance is the law.
Well, that's sort of,
It's
I just wanna make sure that-
and that's why when you write a zoning ordinance, you make it very specific as to what can be done in that particular area on the map. That's what regulates that piece of property. When you adopt a plan, what you're doing is you're saying, we think this is a good idea for how this town ought to develop out throughout the whole thing. And that's good. I mean, planning is good, but it's not the law. You have to have a plan to have zoning, but the plan is just that. It's a plan. It's a vision document. It's a guideline. It's not necessarily intended to be, and in some states, as I said, they don't even, the plan means nothing to them. Now, in Tennessee, it's a little more important. I mean, I think the cases seem to suggest that they consider what's in the plan. And it's a way of rationalizing why you might want to handle a thing a particular way when it comes to zoning, but rezoning.
Now, the extension of my question is, we've come to a fork in the road with this document. And it's mixed-use town center now, it's by ordinance.
That's
Does
right.
this mean this needs to be changed as a part of that ordinance? Or
It-
can it still just be a plan?
It depends on what the legislative body decides. If the legislative body gets it, then my
If they get it
advice,
as a plan, they can say, well, we really want it as an ordinance.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they can adopt the plan by ordinance, and that option is laid out in the statute, and it's done some places and not done other places. But I would say that they would have to. What's interesting that, and the statute's clear about this, you can adopt portions like we have done, portions of the plan as an ordinance, but other parts don't have to be adopted as an ordinance. I would not recommend that within a particular mixed-use town center area, for instance, I think the whole thing needs to be by ordinance or not. I mean, I wouldn't think it would be a good idea to have some of the components of that part, just to get really confusing then.
Thank you, you've answered my question.
Okay.
And I would like to make this point, because we discussed this before. So we've adopted the land use plan, the mixed-use town center land use description, the text of that, which lays out the intent, the uses, and the character. So if anything in this plan, there's changes made to this plan that the Planning Commission attempts to that are not consistent with the land use description, then the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has the ability to say either you they've got to come in, they have to come in and make changes, request or recommend changes to the intent, uses, or character. And if the Board of Mayor and Aldermen says, no, we don't want to change the uses, like right now we have mixed-use town center development, which includes high-density residentials intended to be located only in the area bound by South Campbell Station Road, Concord Road, and Kingston Pike. If they come along and say, well, we want to change that and put high density here, that would have to go, then they would have to amend the plan. They would have to amend the land use description along with the plan, and then that would have to come up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen could say, no, we're not amending this, therefore, this is inconsistent with the plan and you can't do that.
When the case comes back from the Court of Appeals, I'll tell you what the answer is. What I'm telling you is every case is different and they all turn on different facts. And what you've given me is a hypothetical with about 100 facts that you built in there, some of which may or may not change the outcome. I mean, what I'm saying is it's not clear under the law of Tennessee that if there is a deviation from what's in the plan and it's been adopted by ordinance, that is like a zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Zoning is clear. You can't do this. When you say we're going to use this for farmland in the mixed-use town center for green space, and somebody owns the land and they want to do something else with it, and they come and ask, my recommendation would be, if it's been adopted by ordinance, that they change it, just because it avoids conflict and it avoids misunderstanding. But, and if it weren't adopted by an ordinance, I'd say you don't have to, you just have to say, well, that was a guideline, it was something that we thought about at the time, circumstances have changed, and we need to go in a different direction. I just think circumstances change a lot.
I understand that.
And that's why I don't like
And so
putting
the
anything.
board, we've used this before as a reason to deny rezoning, is that it's not consistent with the plan.
And that's a rational basis for denying a rezoning.
Okay, so that's
a whole other new question.
well, that's what I'm sorry, that's what I intended my question to be.
Okay.
If they're requesting a rezoning,
You just have to have a rational basis. And if your rational basis makes sense to you,
okay,
then you can vote based on that. And the fact that it's different than what's in the plan, that's used by lots of people as a reason not to allow something.
Okay.
That's a rational basis. So I think that would be okay.
that's all I have.
Does that answer everybody's questions on the commission? You're lying. There's probably going to be more.
I have a
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Hope we didn't keep you standing up too long. Yes, very good. And thank you, Louise, for the history and background. It's a wonderful chronology. Mark, if we will have people sign up to speak on just one on this item.
Michael Wilson.
Good evening, Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street, Farragut, Tennessee. Never speak after the town attorney because he steals half your thunder. But I only have
Welcome, Mr.
one
Wilson.
item to address on this issue versus two now after his eloquent presentation and discussion. I want to start by thanking everyone who had a hand in getting this plan put together. As many of you know, I've been advocating for this outreach since the fall of 2020, and I'm really excited to see this process coming to a conclusion. I only have a single concern that I want to address, and that's the inclusion of vertical mixed use in the commercial areas. The Vision Plan Steering Committee included language that allows for up to 3 stories of vertical mixed use in the commercial areas found on pages 59, 63, and 69 of the plan. This applies to the future commercial developments found on the Ford property and along Concord Road and the Biddle Farm development. One would assume that this would also apply to any redevelopment of existing commercial properties, such as the West End or Village Green shopping centers. That's a lot of acreage to consider. I looked today, probably about 90 acres is my guess. I question why the Vision Plan Steering Committee would include vertical mixed use in these areas. Roughly 4 years ago, the town decided that vertical mixed use was not viable due to the need for a parking structure or large parking areas. Y'all probably remember that conversation very well. In addition, the town has promised that there would be no more apartments. The inclusion of vertical mixed use opens up multiple areas of the town center to potential apartments. The C1 zoning ordinance, paragraph F2M, clearly states residential is allowed on the upper floors in the buildings with mixed uses. To a layman, the use of the conjunction "or" in that same statement simply limits ground floor residential to a mixed-use town center development plans within the PCD zoning district, which I think the Vice Mayor said earlier is restricted to the Biddle Farm development. So even at a modest 4 to 6 units per acre, we are talking about potentially 350 to 540 additional units across the entire area. Appendix C of the ordinance Appendix C was the part that was being described that was adopting the uses of the mixed-use town center area into the town ordinances. That allows for a residential density of 8 to 15 dwelling units per acre. The 4 to 6 unit per acre density is consistent with densities allowed in the commercial and medium density land use types found in the Land Use Plan Table 3.1. It would also be consistent with the mixed-use town center median density descriptions found on pages 26 and 31 of the CLUP. We all know that someone coming in and asking to add more apartments to the mixed-use town center will go over like a screen door on a submarine. We've all said no to more apartments in Farragut, and your past actions slammed the door shut. I'm now asking you to lock that door and barricade it by removing the vertical mixed-use language from the vision plan, ensuring there's no possibility of additional apartments over the commercial spaces. I wanted to speak to a couple of things. I had a whole discussion on why I didn't think it should be in the ordinance, but again, I think the town attorney covered that very well. When you look at the mixed-use town center description in the comprehensive land use plan, what that language actually says is not multifamily, but it says high-density residential should only be permitted as part of a town center development plan. A town center development plan which includes high-density residential is intended to be located only in the area bound by South Campbell Station Road, Concord, and Kingston Pike.
You got one minute, please.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And as I said earlier, I just wanted to point out there is a lot of contradictions here. When you look at that Appendix C, under uses, this is the uses in Appendix C of the ordinance. Substantial residential use, primarily multifamily residences, but some attached townhomes and duplexes for transitions to adjacent single-family neighborhoods. And then subparagraph 6 under uses says residential density under 8 to 15 dwelling units per acre. So it seems like we have a big conflict between what we really desire and what was put in Appendix C. And I agree, I think that language needs to change.
That language was replaced.
I pulled this today off of the town website, so if it's been replaced, it's not, the town website's not up to date.
Well, that's the amendment was, I'm sorry, I'm taking up his time. Can you reserve that time, please?
Thank you.
When we amended in 2020, in October 2020, when we amended that land use description, we specifically took that language off of that. The problem is, this is the problem we have. We need an updated land use plan because that language doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, I would just reference to Mark, it is still on the town website as of today, because I pulled this morning.
Yes, so it's in that main document that has not been amended at all. We have the main, that land use plan, that's still up there as it was originally presented. And the amendments, this is what's been so unwieldy, is going in through and making sure that these amendments have been made.
Correct.
So that's, because it's no longer says primarily multifamily. That gave me heartburn years and years and years ago.
Now, I would agree that the comprehensive land use plan, mixed-use town center portion doesn't say that. The town website, Appendix C, mixed-use town center, still does say that. So if this is out of date, then it's just,
We need to address that.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. That needs to be addressed. So the real question.
I'm sorry. Where did you get that? Where did you find that?
Off of the town website, out of the Code of Ordinances.
Code of Ordinances.
Code of Ordinances, Appendix C, which
Okay.
was where it's documented, the adoption was documented. So the real question is, for me, do we want to have above the commercial properties, do we want to have some form of multifamily residential, even if it's at 6, 7, 8 units per acre, because that's a lot of units on top of the existing increase in density for the townhomes we want, the other residential, the commercial that we all desire in the town center. So I think that's something that needs to be considered as we move forward with this. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about what Mike just talked about? It's not for you, Mike, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Can I ask a question?
Commissioner, it's open for discussion.
Okay, thanks.
On you.
It's just for my own knowledge. So a couple of months ago, and I don't think anybody was here, Farragut Crossing asked to do some of their commercial stuff out front as exactly what Mr. Wilson was talking about. And we said no to that. So I guess my question is if it, I'm not saying it should remain for the record, it maybe needs to be changed, but if it stays in, we still have the power to say, no, we're not going to allow lofts on the third floor of some three-story building. Am I correct or am I wrong?
The C1
Yes,
has been changed.
yeah, you're correct.
You're correct. No, you're only correct that we can.
You
We did.
require a concept plan if it's more than 2 stories, so that it can be evaluated in terms of how you're proposing to use the third and fourth, potentially up to 4th story. So we did add that in the mixed-use town center zoning ordinance language, so that is a requirement.
It really did make it past staff development.
Okay.
So it basically would evaluate it on a case-by-case basis, and there's some parameters in the zoning ordinance that guides the decision makers in that regard. What am I gonna be evaluating this request? What's my basis of evaluation? And
It's just, it's come up a couple of times, and I just want to understand it better. Thanks.
But, and to be clear, the way that's written is, you have it 2 stories, but if you're going to third
go
and
more
fourth.
than 2, yes.
More than 2.
That's
So
right.
you can have, I would contend that from, it's, here's the struggle. Mixed use can also be commercial in the main, office above. Doesn't have
That's
to
right.
be residential.
Yep.
Do we want, is that something that we run the risk of not having? Also, a vertical mixed-use building can be a live-work townhome where
Right.
you
Right.
have, it's a townhome, but you have commercial in the main and people can live, and they own the townhome. So that's an opportunity that is considered vertical mixed use. So when you completely take that out, are you, I think as a community, we want to have as much say over how this, and like Tom Hale said, we're trying to make our plan, almost trying to make our plan a zoning ordinance, and then that's when we're running into problems. So these are things that need to be thought about when we finalize this. I have to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of multiplexes. I don't think they fit the character of Farragut now, and I would advocate to remove those from the plan as well. But the mixed use is, it's not just commercial in the main, residential above. There's other options there that we don't want to necessarily throw out with all of it. But there is, the community is concerned. I would also contend this, it's very hard to, you don't really get to control whether something is leased or purchased. It really is a form. We have an entire neighborhood in Hardin Valley that is single-family detached, are rentals. So when you're trying to control something, think about trying to control the dimensions of it, the height of it, necessarily the use of it, because we can control that. But we can't necessarily control whether something, where the check goes at the beginning of the month, and that's a struggle for us.
I think that was, again, just to be clear, like, I thought some kind of lofts that were purchased would be super cool. Rented, not so much. So, yeah, I get that part. That's,
We can't regulate that.
yep, I know.
We still have, it sounds like we still have a lot of work to do here.
Yeah.
It had to be purchased as a law. And then,
We're getting there.
entrepreneur, and then what he could do is just rent
Yeah,
out,
right,
you know, he'd own them,
right.
which is,
All right, good. Got it.
Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that was the only speaker we had. No, I think this is, it's really up to, Tom and I have talked a lot about this yesterday and how to deal with the language in this vision plan, how to blend it and mesh it in with our 2012 adopted plan, which I've known that all along, we were going to have to do that. You can cross-reference it. That's one way to do it.
well, again,
But
we're
I
not
think-
rushing this.
Yeah.
Right. So, if, as we move further, obviously Tom and I will be in conversation and we'll figure out what would be the best path forward.
Yeah.
I think, other than that, are there any other items in this plan that we need to look at? And I will say this, the consultant is basically finished with this. I mean, they've been paid for the plan. They've done what they were asked to do. We can't make a whole lot of other changes without, paying them more.
Yeah.
So what would you envision the next steps to be then?
I think he's going to talk with, to hash it out with Tom, and then have a recommendation for us on how to move forward.
Maybe it could be something like a resolution to the board that says that we, this we support the concepts in this vision plan. We think they're appropriate concepts for this portion of the town. And then the board can do what they want to do with it. They can not do anything if they don't want to, or they can, agree to that.
Would it come back to the planning commission, though, for a recommendation?
Yeah, this would have to come back to the planning commission, probably as a resolution, but again, Tom and I can talk about that, but it won't be an ordinance. It'll be probably a resolution as just,
You're saying the plan is where it is now.
I'm sorry.
Unless we go back to the consultant and pay them more money to
Well, we've gonna,
tweak it.
Well, we can make some minor adjustments, but I'm talking, if you're talking about making a bunch of changes, that's not gonna be possible, not without a new contract with these people.
I'm not gonna make a lot of changes, but I don't consider it finalized yet.
No, I mean,
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I think we have a few more bridges to cross before that one.
well, I guess for purposes of next month's meeting, what do you all want to see? Because I need to know that as a staff person.
I'd like to see at least the amendments that we're talking about in item 12 incorporated into this plan.
Yeah.
Can do,
There's
okay.
no way I want to go forward and say, well, I know it's going to change. This isn't.
Yeah, that's a pretty minor change there. That's just Concord Road.
That's my point.
Right.
As far as updating it.
Yep.
how does anyone feel about keeping multiplexes in or taking them out? I mean, I've made I don't think they fit there, but how does anyone else feel about that?
But it's basically up to, it's not, you
not
don't
required.
have to do that.
That's true.
It's same as the
You're true.
vertical
That's
mixed
true.
use.
It's still,
I mean, technically, those office buildings on Parkside Drive are vertical mixed use in a way. There's different kinds of uses and different floors. Some are, office, and some are,
Raymond James,
yeah, I mean,
and part of it's even, the other building's part of it's.
the way I've always seen this plan is that's all it is. It's just a vision document with concepts in there to guide more detailed implementation tools like zoning, subdivision regulations, whatever. That's all this has ever been to me. And
Well, in
the
a way,
only
it's worked already. I mean, there's people engaged about it and offering feedback
That's
and
right.
critique, and that's the whole point of having a plan.
And the higher level of adoption you can give it, the more it says to somebody that might be wanting to do something in this part of the town that this community this is really what they want to see, because this is what they've adopted. I mean, I think if I come in there and I see that, and I want to do something very different from that, I probably ought to realize that I'm going to be wasting my time. Or if I'm doing something that's consistent with that,
you're gonna get
I would
somewhere.
know that I have a pretty good chance to get, some return on my investment. They don't want to take a big risk by proposing something that they don't know really how the community stands with regards to what they're proposing.
I think the next step is probably for us for the planning commission to adopt this, or not adopt it, by resolution, this vision plan. And then from there, work on how we're
Decide how
going
to-
to incorporate it into the comprehensive land use plan.
There's really nothing in this vision plan. I looked at the comprehensive land use plan. It's only 2 pages that are really the meat of the mixed-use town center. There's nothing in either of those that are conflicting. Everything in this plan here is very consistent with what's in our comprehensive land use plan.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we're done.
So, you get the answer to your question? I think we want a resolution for.
Okay,
next
and I'll
meeting.
get with Tom on
Says
putting
minor-
that together. Okay,
We resolved that this is.
and we'll
the
modify the
vision plan.
Concord Road part to make it consistent, yes.
Okay, we'll look forward to
Okay.
seeing it in August. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 7, discussion on a request to rezone parcel 191.1, tax map 130, south of Home Federal Bank off of Parkside Drive, 1.57 acres from office district 3 stories, and that's 013. To general commercial, C1, applicant Turkey Creek Land Partners, LLC.
Okay, since this is a rezoning, this is just a workshop discussion. This involves the last undeveloped parcel that's part of the Turkey Creek development off Parkside Drive. This parcel is just to the south of Home Federal Bank. This is the Home Federal Bank here. This is South Campbell Station, or North Campbell Station, excuse me. And here's the parcel. Public Shopping Center is to the east. This particular parcel does not have, and nor will it have, direct access to Parkside Drive. There is a platted access easement that comes in from Parkside Drive along the east side of Home Federal and this parcel that provides the access. The idea of rezoning this is basically this parcel is visible from North Campbell Station Road. It's currently zoned 3-story office, and it's a little over 1.5 acres. The 3-story office zone has a 70-foot building setback from adjacent zone lines, and it allows a building up to 3 stories, 42 feet in height or 3 stories. This parcel really too small for that type of a building in all likelihood in order to provide the parking that you would need. And there's also been interest expressed to the owner for a couple of restaurant concepts, and those are not permitted uses in the 013 district. So what they're requesting is to rezone this parcel to the same zoning district that Publix is zoned to the east, and that's general commercial. From a staff's perspective, the general commercial is really, frankly, more compatible with this parcel because of its size. We did ask the applicant if they wanted to go ahead and rezone Home Federals to C1, but I think they're wanting to leave that as 013, which is fine. The medical office building on the west side of North Campbell Station Road is also zoned 013, so there would be some 013 adjacent to that or across the road from that. So when this does come before the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the board, the staff does support this rezoning request. The C1 is consistent with the adjacent zone and would be consistent with the adjacent plan of development. It gives the property more options and more marketability, more potential tax revenue generating uses, which would benefit the town. So that's basically an overview of what the applicant is requesting, and this is kind of the zoning in the general area, and you can see the blue is the 013 here. C1 over here with Publix, Longhorn, Zaxby's, all that is C1. And then on the north side of Parkside Drive, that's regional commercial that actually backs up to the interstate. To the south of this tract is zoned rural residential of this area here and along Heron Road. So that's an overview of the zoning of this particular request. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
You don't have anybody signed up to speak on
I do not.
Pretty straightforward.
it? Yeah.
Can I ask, what's the setback for, because it butts up to residential?
Well, there is a required 35-foot buffer, which is effectively the setback.
Okay,
In
That's
C,
what I mean, the buffer.
in C1.
okay.
And we'll talk about that with the plat, which is the next agenda item.
Number 8 addresses that. Yeah.
Currently, there's a 50-foot platted buffer along that south property line.
Okay,
But the zone would only require a 35-foot in C1. Actually, 013 only requires a 25-foot buffer by the zoning requirements at least.
Is there a planting requirement in that buffer?
Yeah, it's a fully planted buffer,
Okay,
yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, that buffer was planted all along the periphery of Turkey Creek development by the developer when they first developed the whole project.
So it's full on, there's protection. I know it sits up higher than the
Yep.
residential below it, so that's,
Yeah,
okay.
and there's a platted setback or green space from Campbell Station Road too that they're not proposing to change, and that's a 30-foot space that is required to be landscaped.
Jeff, do you have a question?
No, I think it makes a ton of sense.
Okay. Jan? Mayor? Good, straightforward. John? Okay, thank you, Mark. Think we're
We'll
covered it?
put this on the August agenda for a recommendation.
Okay. We'll look forward to it next month. Agenda item number 8, discussion and public hearing on approval of a plat of correction related to parcel 191.1, tax map 130, south of Home Federal Bank off Parkside Drive, and amend the buffer strip from a 50-foot to 35 feet. 1.57 acres zoned 013, Turkey Creek Land Partners.
This is a plat amendment. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, there's a platted 50-foot buffer along the south property line. Actually continues on to the east across the Publix development as well. Their request at this time is to amend that plat, the plat note that specifies that buffer width, and to change it from 50 feet to 35 feet, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the minimum buffer strip for C1. What they're requesting to rezone this to. The 50-foot buffer was a developer-imposed buffer. They agreed to apply it. It wasn't necessarily a requirement. It's something that they can solely amend. I've had the town attorney look at the language of how, this could be amended, what would be the process, and basically they have sole control over amending the buffer. This is the last, as I mentioned earlier, undeveloped parcel in the whole Turkey Creek development. So everything else in Turkey Creek's already built out. So there really wouldn't be any, if you're concerned about a precedent, there wouldn't be any rationale for someone to lessen the buffer because it's already built out to where it's to its built out extent. And so there would be no benefit to modify the buffer anywhere else. In the case of this, since they are trying to look at potentially restaurant uses, that additional 15 feet for some use that could generate a lot of parking requirements like restaurants could become a very valuable space. And since the 35 feet does still meet the buffer requirements of C1, from a staff's perspective, we have no issues with this. So we would recommend approval of this amendment to the re-subdivision plat for this lot as presented, subject to obtaining the required signatures.
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Record show, item number 8, approval of the plat correction to amend the buffer strip has been approved. 7 yes, no no's. Agenda item number 9, discussion and public hearing on approval of plat involving the re-subdivision of lots 1 and 2, parcels 3.22 and 3.24 on the tax map 143 into 3 lots, 27.35 acres, currently zoned PCD, Biddle Farms Residential, LLC applicant.
This plat is similar to what happened with the Kroger Marketplace, as basically with these planned commercial developments, they end up selling off different portions of those. They're still all subject to the overall requirements of the PCD development and the covenants that are recorded in association with the overall planned commercial development. But really the purpose of this plat is simply to create and sell off the townhome portion, which is right here, of the Biddle Farm residential portion of the overall Biddle Farm PCD project. It also will plat Neptune Road, which is this road here, that connects Brookline to South Campbell Station, because otherwise this townhome lot would not have legal public road frontage. So this is largely constructed. There are a few items that are, the town engineer is working on a letter of credit amount for completion items, but that's basically the purpose of this particular plat. There'll be a couple other plats in the near future for this remaining portion of the development as they finish up the improvements, and they'll plat the rest of the public streets. This plat also actually plats the exact location of the walking trail that has recently been constructed along the east side, basically along this, where this pointer is going, to establish that walking trail easement as part of this particular plat. So it's a pretty straightforward plat. The staff's remaining comments, other than obtaining the required signatures, are providing the completion letter of credit for the items that are required to be completed for the Neptune Road in an amount determined by the town engineer. There's also some, on this plat at least, some variable right-of-way widths. So either the right-of-way needs to be a consistent width, or where it does vary, then they need to call out specific dimensions in those locations so that it can be easily recreated in the future for ownership and maintenance responsibilities, because the town's going to ultimately maintain this street and the right-of-way, so we need to understand, you know, what are our boundaries in terms of maintenance. So other than that, it's an overview of what's being requested with this item, and again, the staff recommends approval subject to the items that I had noted.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there anybody from the applicant here that wants to address any questions we have regarding the subject twos, or?
Do you have any
All
in
good
that?
with the subject twos? Very good.
No problem with the right of ways?
All set there. Commissioners, any additional comments or questions? Okay, Mark, like you said, it looks pretty straightforward. With the motion and the second, I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Let the record show agenda item number 9 for plat involving re-subdivision lots 1 and 2, parcels 322 and 324 have been approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 10 has been removed from tonight's agenda. Agenda item number 11, discussion on a request to rezone the property at 12715 Union Road from rural single-family residential, that's R1, and general single-family residential R2 to agriculture. 8.64 acres. Will Glaffenheim, applicant.
Yes, this project, or this property, excuse me, fronts on Union Road, just to the west of Fox Run. This is Brochard Boulevard here, and Fox Run subdivision's entrance to Union Road. The parcel in question is this one. It's a little over 8.5 acres. Basically, the dwelling unit is on the west side of the creek. This is a tributary of the Little Turkey Creek that runs through the property and through part of Fox Run. Essentially, the west side of the creek is currently zoned general single-family residential R2, and then the east side is zoned rural residential, which is also the same zone as the portion of Fox Run that backs up to this portion of the property. The main reason for the rezoning request, the town received a citizen request to look at, the owner of the property has chickens that are on this portion of the property, which is R2. In the R2 zone, the only agricultural uses permitted are crops, and you have to have more than 5 acres for those. So livestock's not a permitted use in R2, but it is a permitted use in R1, as long as you have more than 1 acre. So he clearly has enough land under the R1 to have that as a permitted use. The request was to rezone to agricultural, which is ultimately up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. From the staff's perspective, it would make more sense and probably more marketability for the owner in the long term if he were to sell the property to rezone it to R1, because you do have some R1 that does abut the property to the east and to the, well, mainly to the east. So you would have some consistency there, whereas agricultural would be kind of an island of agricultural by itself. It's big enough to be zoned agricultural. One of the things in agricultural that this property would qualify for is a second dwelling unit. I mean, they could meet those requirements. So that's something to factor in to the consideration. But just from the staff's perspective, since you do have some R1 that abuts this, and the R1 would allow the use of agricultural livestock on their property, it would seem to me to be a better district as opposed to the agricultural, if you all want to rezone it at all. But again, this is just a discussion item because it's a rezoning, but that's kind of an overview of what this is about and how we got here. So if y'all have any questions, I can try to answer those, or the owners here, I think. So.
Yeah, I'm Will. I'm the owner.
Will, could you please give us your address for the record, and we'll open up the floor to you for any comments, and then we may fire some questions back.
Yeah, the property in question is my address, 12715 Union Road in Farragut.
Thank you.
Oh, you live there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the main reasons, so we're talking a lot about density. I was wanting to kind of make sure it could never be more dense as it is, right? That was one of the reasons why going so far into agricultural, because you can't have, you know, it's 5 acres or more and everything. So when we purchased the property, it was kind of like an estate, hopefully lifelong kind of situation. And I don't ever want kids or anyone like chopping it up into R1, because you can get lots. I could fit lots of different houses on there with the current zoning on it. So as Mark was saying, I talked to Mark on the phone, I mean, I think it's easier just to move it all into R1, but I'm not concerned about the marketability of the property personally. But that was one of the main reasons, is just maintaining the minimal density of it. And along with the chicken and stuff, my daughter would love a pony, get her a pony, you know, that kind of stuff. Just personal use, you know.
I'll admit I'm comfortable with what the staff is recommending. It is surrounded by residential. R1 permits you to do what you'd like to do. Agricultural actually would open up for a second dwelling unit that right now you'd have to subdivide to have a second dwelling unit. I'm comfortable with it being R1. It makes sense given the land use plan that we currently have, and the existing zoning all around it is residential. So that's kind of where I would land. But by the time this gets to the board, mayor and alderman, I won't be there.
You won't be around to answer that, yeah.
Now, one side of the creek is R1, the other side of the creek is,
R2. It was Chip Huber's property. He's the one who developed Fox Run back in the day. So I think he had intentions, I talked to him about it, on doing some more stuff and maximizing it, and he just kind of to heck with it and just built his property there. We purchased it back in 2020. So I was just wanting to make sure there's no future density development on the
so
property.
you'd be comfortable with R1?
I'd prefer agricultural.
It's residential in the future land use
Yeah.
map. I mean, it's about.
But I mean, I would be fine with R1, I guess, but I prefer agriculture if I can.
Mark, what is the difference uses agriculturally between R1 and agricultural? In other words, you said chickens are.
Generally not.
How about hogs or cows or?
If you got more than 1 acre, they're very similar. Yeah,
Really?
pretty much the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
With the extension of Union Road, I think they're taking less than 1/10 of an acre, because whenever that construction starts.
Right away.
That'll happen in
Yeah.
20 years.
I know. When we bought the place, they say it started in 22, and, well,
Yeah, I started my
The
career
30,
here on
22.
Union
yeah,
Road.
exactly. But I think with the bridge, it is, because when I lived there, it bottlenecks, when y'all widen that bridge, the mouth of it, the way on the plan, that floodplain will, would you get your Clomar and Lomar from FEMA, is gonna really help the floodplain, because that floods a lot.
Yeah, it'd be an engineered road then.
Yeah.
It's not now. That was an Indian path, and then they threw gravel on it, and it became the road. It's never been engineered, so. Really.
Oh, wow.
Well, as far as putting together a resolution for next month is the R1 kind of the,
R1 is my preference.
I mean, it's what's around it it really is, and it's more consistent with our future land use map. And it allows you to do what you want to do. I mean, so to me, it would be a better fit than agriculture here. Now, if it was on Allen Kirby Road and where it's surrounded by other large farmland, then it would make more sense. But probably here, R1, would be a better fit. Yeah.
Anybody else
Okay.
have any questions?
We'll put that together for a recommendation next month then.
All right, very good. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Agenda item number 12. Discussion and public hearing on amendments to the future land use map and the comprehensive land use plan update involving the following locations. Number 1, updating the land purchased by Knox County Schools off Boring Road to reflect a civic institutional land use designation. Number 2, updating the land purchased by the town of Farragut off McPhee Road to reflect a Parks and Recreation land use designation. Item 3, updating the areas that are currently shown as medium-density residential and low-density residential south and east of the Ford property and the Park Place subdivision to reflect a very low-density residential land use designation. And the last, number 4, updating the areas that are currently shown as medium-density residential along a portion of Concord Road to reflect a low-density residential land use designation in the northern portion, and the civic institutional land use designation for the Pleasant Forest Cemetery and the area abutting the cemetery to the north. Town of Farragut applicant.
And that is the longest caption we've ever had for
That's a long one.
an agenda item, I
I know the
think.
parks
So, good job. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. We talked about this as a workshop item last month. There's 4 areas, and now they're in resolution 24-09. Because this is in not in a mixed-use town center right now, all of it, but it can be approved through the Planning Commission. First one is the Boring Road property that Knox County Schools has purchased a few months ago to make that civic institutional. It's currently about 1/3 low-density residential and 2/3 very low-density residential. The town's property that we bought off McPhee Road, that's currently open space cluster residential and open space, and this would be changing that to Parks and Recreation. The open space would remain the same. Third area is the area to the south and east of the Ford property, to the east of Glen Abbey, north of Bridgewater, and then southeast of Park Place. There's some of this is currently medium-density residential, kind of in this area. The vast majority of it is low-density residential, which is 4 to 6 units per acre, which, given the topography of this area and the surrounding plan of development, we are proposing to change all of that to very low-density residential, which is 2 to 4 dwelling units per acre, and that's consistent with the built density of the adjacent subdivisions, Park Place, Glen Abbey, and Bridgewater. And then the 4th area is along Concord Road. There's a lot of medium-density residential kind of right along Concord Road. There's also a small node of low-density residential here on this parcel. That's why that's in the caption. And then basically redesignating that to low-density residential instead of medium-density residential. And that would be consistent with the townhome concept that's shown on the vision plan for the mixed-use town center. And then this area here, it would be changed from Parks and Rec, Recreation to Civic Institutional. That's the Pleasant Forest Cemetery. This is kind of an area for the Pleasant Forest Cemetery to grow into. There's kind of a tree line here. Then you got the floodplain to the west of that. Then you got part of the Pleasant Forest Cemetery on the east side of Concord Road here, and that would also be designated as civic institutional. So that's the 4 areas that are proposed to be updated through Resolution 24-09, and the staff recommends approval.
Move to approve Resolution 24-09 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 2409. I'll go ahead and open it up for any discussion. Ed, I know you had some concerns about, been vocal, and you think that's appropriate now.
I do have a comment. So a couple of weeks ago,
Vice Mayor?
the joke was that on Nextdoor was that the mixed-use town center vision plan was my last hurrah, which it's not. I'm thrilled that the community has come in and had their say about the mixed-use town center. 57% have indicated that they want it. Only 27% said that they don't. The other, less than the majority were non-committal. This is my last hurrah. This has been a 7-year process of amending this land use plan. The effort that's gone into it from staff level has been monumental. This was something I started bugging Mark about in 2017. We got to open this plan, we got to open this plan. There's issues here we've got to address. I mean, the plan itself had some good meat and good bones, but there was some stuff that was way too dense. And as we started developing, we recognized that as a community, we had too much density built into that plan. And this is one of the things, the boxes I really wanted checked, was to have this land use plan completed. So thank you, everyone, for all of your efforts. This has been a long haul, and it's just in time. So that's all I had.
Somehow I don't think it's your last hurrah.
Well,
No, but it could be good. Any other commissioners have any comments they'd like to make before we go to a vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve Resolution 24-09. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Mark, let the record show that Resolution 24-09 is approved unanimously with a vote of 7 yes and no noes.
Yahoo!
Didn't I ask? I know I didn't see any. Yeah. Mark, you didn't, just for the record, you didn't have any resident comments for the resolution?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for pointing that out. They're signed up for utilities. All right, Mark, do we have any utilities this evening?
No, sir.
And do you have any remaining blue cards for public comment?
No, we don't.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight, and the time is now approximately 8:54 p.m., and without further comment or objections, the July 18th, 2024 Municipal Planning Commission meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Anna, thank you for coming tonight. That's your first taste of your urban planning future. So, yeah, some of the meetings